What's up, my fellow adult collector? Welcome to SeViLion Collectibles. Recently, I've been able to upgrade my phone and computer, which will in turn allow me to make some improvements here on the channel. The first thing I decided to give a major overhaul to were the graphics cards that I use in my reviews, going from this to this. I've darkened most of my aesthetics because that's typically how I view my devices anyway. While I was in the process of recreating these new cards, I decided to also take the opportunity to update and revise all of the rules for each individual guideline. Therefore, the purpose of this video is to explain in depth what those changes are, that way you can see what my reviews will be like going forward. If this is your first time landing on my channel, hi, my name is SeViL, and here I like to discuss action figures and other collectibles based on my favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. If you find this video enjoyable or informative, please give me a thumbs up, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that notification bell. My first guideline is about the uniqueness of the figure. Is it a totally brand new sculpt? Does it reuse a lot of parts? Or is it just a complete repaint? From now on, I'm going to say that if it's not at least half new, then it won't get this point. Companies like Hasbro or Mattel are notorious for putting a new head on an old body and calling it a new figure. Of course, there are a lot of cases where that does make sense, but still, it won't get this point. Even my favorite brand, Storm Collectibles, when they go and do the Mortal Kombat Ninjas or Cyber Ninjas, it's the same body over and over again, just recolored, but those won't get this point anymore. The next guideline is all about the sculpt detail. Is it more than just a flat surface? Does it provide the desired effect? Is it multi-layered in places where it makes sense, such as belts, mask, and outerwear? This is something that most companies across the board are getting better and better at, especially in my niche dealing with live-action characters or video game characters. One of the primary reasons why I don't really get into the comic book figures all that much is because most of them tend to be a somewhat seemingly generic body sculpt with some paint slapped on it. However, going as far back as McFarlane's Movie Maniac series, most movie figures have had way more detail to them. Next up is accuracy. Is the overall design true to the particular interpretation of the character? If it's supposed to be using the likeness of an actor playing the part, does it really look like them? Also, are the colors correct and consistent? As long as I can answer yes to all of these questions when applicable, the figure will get the point. Most companies are getting better and better at this, but there are still a lot of misses out there. Moving on to the next guideline, proportion. Are all the parts properly sized? Does it fit into a particular scale like 110 or 112 or 118? And of course, is it in scale with related characters? Most of the time within the same line, it can be pretty consistent, but when you change lines, even within the same company, it may not match up. Like Hasbro does a lot of different lines, Power Rangers, Marvel, Ghostbusters, but those aren't necessarily in scale with each other. In fact, right now the biggest complaint about McFarlane toys is that there's really no consistency of scale within their lines. Superman and Harley Quinn being just about the same height should never happen. Next up is articulation. My rule used to be that a newly created figure needed 20 points or more. However, with all the advancements in recent years, I've decided to increase this to 25. Plus, the parts do need to fully function properly while also not being too hindered by other body parts. As far as mass-produced figures like you'd find in most stores, Hasbro has been pretty good at leading the charge on this, especially with Spider-Man and related characters. Along with the articulation, you also want a good sense of balance. Does it easily stand in vanilla poses? Can it handle more dynamic poses? Then, of course, there's my favorite balance test. Can it stand on one leg at a time? In my opinion, Storm Collectibles is the absolute best at this. They're also really good at providing plenty of accessories with each character. My rule used to be that a figure only needed one accessory to earn this point, but I'm going to update that now too. Instead, does it have at least 3 accessories? Does it include appropriate weapons? And does it have swappable parts? Weapons aren't necessarily required, but whatever the item is still needs to make sense with the character. Mattel has gotten really good with the WWE Ultimate line, including swappable arms, jackets, extra heads, all that sort of stuff. But if I see another Superman figure with a trigger finger hand, that's not one that would use a gun for any reason, it's not counting. Next up on my list is quality control. Is it too fragile? Does it have loose joints? Are there too many flaws in the paint? This is something that McFarlane's been pretty consistent with, at least. The QC issues I have seen with the DC or Mortal Kombat figures pretty much happened across the board. I will say that McFarlane is doing great to pump out these 7-inch figures at the $20 price point, though. I've never really defined my pricing guideline very clearly before, so I'm going to do that now. I've broken it up into 3 separate classes because it should be pretty obvious that you're not going to get the same quality of figure at the $20 price point that you do at the $100 price point or more. So, in my opinion, the low tier class is for companies like Jazzwares and Mattel. Neither of those should really ever break the $20 price point. My mid tier is like Hasbro, McFarlane, and NECA. None of those should ever break the $40 price point. I don't think I've ever seen any of them do so, but they've gotten close sometimes. Finally, my upper tier is like the Mezco 112 and Storm Collectibles. Most of those retail at under $100, but I have started to notice some of them creeping up to it, and I personally don't really like the idea of crossing that 3-digit barrier. Last, but not least on my list, is accessibility. Is it available at local stores? Can it be easily ordered online? Or, if you have to go to the secondhand market, is it within $10 of the MSRP? In the end, it does not matter how great a figure is if you can't get it. Unfortunately, in recent times, this is becoming a more and more pertinent issue among collectors. So, in the rare event that all 10 points are met, the figure will receive a full 10 out of 10 star rating, meaning it is flawless and one of the best of all time. For me, a recent example of this is the Storm Collectibles Dark Side. After that, we come to a 9 out of 10 star rating, meaning it is outstanding and one of the best of the year. One of my favorites from this particular year has been the NECA Super Shredder, based on Ninja Turtles 2. The next rating down is an 8 out of 10 stars, meaning it is excellent and a must-own for all fans. For this, I think a great example is the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Green Arrow, based on the Arrow TV show. The next rating is a 7 out of 10 stars, meaning it is still amazing and worth owning for all fans of the character. The Walmart exclusive Avengers Endgame version of Captain America fits this pretty well. Moving on down the line, we come to a 6 out of 10 star rating, meaning it's still pretty awesome and worth owning even for the casual fan. Didn't really pick a particular figure for this example, but generally, the WWE women figures land on this spot. The lowest rating I've ever officially given anything is a 5 out of 10 stars, meaning it is superb, but really only worth owning for diehard completionists. This score just recently went to NECA's 1/16 scale die-cast DeLorean from Back to the Future. It was most certainly nowhere near as good as it should have been. The rest of my potential scores had never actually been used, but I did still create them just in case. A 4-star rating would be good, but only worth owning for basic display. A 3-star rating would be okay, but only worth owning as a child's toy. A 2-star rating would be weak and not worth owning for any reason. And finally, a 1-star rating would be pathetic and not worth the plastic it's made from. So, with all that said, now maybe you have a better idea of how I go about rating my figures. A lot has to go wrong all at the same time for me to give something a truly low score. In all honesty, I really hope that I never come across anything that makes me have to drop below the 5-star rating I've already given. I think most of my scores tend to hover around that 6 to 8 range, but of course I do give out some 9s and the rare 10s. At the end of the day though, I am just one guy and these are just my opinions. Yours may be very different from mine. However, saying that though does make me curious. Would you agree with my rating system? Would you change something here and there? Would you make something a 10 where I wouldn't? Or vice versa? Let's talk about it in the comments below.